Good morning and happy Friday. I am excited for today's program on accessibility and how it benefits all Milwaukeeans. But before we get started, I would like to take a moment to reflect on the 1 year anniversary since our city, our state, and the nation shut down. Last year, today, I took the team over to Moe's Irish Pub for a short cocktail hour after work, and we had no idea that many of us wouldn't return to our offices or normalcy for the next year. This year has been filled with incredible highs and lows for the tourism and hospitality industry. The highs far more rare than the lows. As I sit in my office across from the riverside, the sign says 1 year dark. So many of our businesses have spent the last year dark. And we have so many businesses that didn't make it through this difficult time. And there are still so many unknowns as it relates to what getting back to normal will look like. At Visit, things look much different today than they did 1 year ago as well. Like all of you, we had to make changes internally and some tough decisions, and then figure out how to best support not only our partners, but our community as well. We did this through blood drives, mask giveaways, advocacy for our industry, and changing the way we communicate to all of you. We tried our hardest throughout the past year to be a resource, and we do hope that you found our increased communication to be of comfort, as well as giving you insight and hope. Last night, President Biden said that all Americans would be eligible for the vaccine by May 1st, and that gives me great hope that this summer will bring festivals, concerts, shows, meetings, conventions, and most of all, many visitors back to our city. This past year has certainly showed us at Visit Milwaukee, and hopefully all of you, just how important tourism is to Milwaukee. Our team at Visit Milwaukee completely understands what our mission is moving forward, to bring people to Milwaukee to experience everything that we have to offer. But until we can reach community immunity, please continue to mask up, socially distance, wash and sanitize so that we can continue down this path to returning to a time where we can all do what we love with the people that we love. Also, remember, this week brings another round of volleyball. Once again, we're going to have over 2,000 people here looking for places to eat, drink, shop, and explore. I was downtown last week, and it was so good to see our streets filled with people, our restaurants busier than they have been, yet still safe, and our occupancy increase. A big shout out to Sports Milwaukee, our very own Marissa, the Wisconsin Center District, and our hotel community for successfully executing the first large event our city has seen since early 2020. Now let's get started. As we mentioned last week, in honor of Women's History Month, we're kicking off each of our webinars this month by highlighting some of the many incredible women who really have made a difference in Milwaukee's history. Today, we're celebrating Setonia Weston Roy, author and founder of Niche Book Bar. Weston Roy saw a need for access to Black literature outside of the month of February and created Wisconsin's only Black-owned bookstore focused on Black literature. What started as Niche Book Bike, where Weston Roy would pedal her custom-built tricycle full of books to public parks to sell, will now become a brick-and-mortar store to open this spring in Bronzeville. She also found the Black Authors Collective, an online collaborative that boasts 75 Black authors who come together and share their work. About 90% of them are based in Milwaukee, but the group has recently welcomed writers from other parts of the country. So let's give a big shout out to Setonia Weston Roy. Thank you. The most recent STAR report contains the first 6 days of hotel month. So far, we've already seen our overall downtown occupancy grow by 3.5% and rate grow $6.96 week over week. We can't wait to see how the rest of hotel month continues to impact these trends. The transient segment contributed 1.5 of that occupancy growth, and the group segment contributed 2.1, with the majority of that growth coming on the weekend with Wisconsin Junior Volleyball in town. The transient segment also saw a nice increase in ADR week over week, growing by $9.19. And transient weekend rates held over $100 for both Friday and Saturday night, which is the first time this year. The most recent Longwoods data shows that 84% of American travelers report that they plan to travel within the next 6 months. This is the third wave in a row with this statistic over 80% and an increase of 3% from the last report. Only 35% of American travelers indicated the coronavirus is greatly impacting their decision to travel in the next 6 months. This is not only a decline of 11 points since January, but it's also the level where we started at the very beginning of the survey back in March of 2020. 36% of American travelers stated that they are waiting to travel until they receive the vaccine. Luckily, again, with President Biden's announcement that all Americans will have access by May, this should be happening very soon. This past week, Visit Milwaukee's Chief Marketing Officer, Megan Sardini, and Vice President of Sales, Leslie Johnson, traveled to Green Bay for the Wisconsin Hotel and Lodging Association's Spring Symposium and Expo. Megan was able to speak on a panel with other destination executives about what we're seeing as far as inbound business travel, our plans for marketing hotel stays to leisure travels, and more. We are always proud to be able to represent Milwaukee in front of the state's hospitality community. In advance of the Wisconsin Juniors Volleyball Tournament and Hotel Month, we quietly launched a new offering that both locals and visitors will love, the Milwaukee Deals Pass. With the Deals Pass, you can do more for less. Save on your next visit to downtown restaurants, breweries, museums, theaters, local boutiques, tours, activities, and more. This also allows you, our partners, a chance to offer deals to encourage visitors to come and visit you. So we encourage you to start exploring and saving today at visitmilwaukee.org/Milwaukee-deals. If your business would like to participate with an offer for our leisure travelers, please reach out to Maria Strand at mstrand@milwaukee.org. Please be sure to be on the lookout for further communications on this exciting way to communicate to our incoming visitors. To celebrate International Women's Day, Third Space Brewing and Pink Boots Society collaborated on a beer called Like a Girl. Part of the proceeds from Like a Girl IPA will benefit Pink Boots Wisconsin chapter to help fund scholarships, educational opportunities, and other services to women working in Wisconsin's beer industry. You can find the Like a Girl IPA beginning March 26th at Third Space Brewery. Next Thursday, March 18th, the Milwaukee Repertory Theater is presenting Rep, Air, Repair, Divides, a virtual dialogue series with an online performance that will spark facilitated discussion in partnership with the Zeidler Group. This month, in honor of Women's History Month, they will celebrate American actress, poet, and playwright Dale Orlander Smith and the powerful contribution she has made to women's history, Black history, and theater history. March 18th will feature scenes from Until the Flood, written and performed by her and produced at the Milwaukee Rep in 2018. If you're interested in joining the conversation, email athome@milwaukeerep.com to secure your spot. After this past year, I think we could all use some comfort food. And that's exactly what Dan Jacobs and Dan Van Wright think too, which is why they're opening up a new restaurant in the former Fauntleroy space in the 3rd Ward. This new culinary concept will be called Fool's Errand and will feature indulgent comfort food such as a BLT made with thick house pork belly, everybody's favorite steak Diane, matzo ball soup, chicken liver toast, patty melt, potato pierogies, and fried chicken. The opening is slated for April 1st with dinner service Thursday through Saturday and a Sunday brunch. As we head into the spring, Lowlands Group is opening a new outdoor private dining experience that offers stunning views of the city's skyline. The VIP Luxe Chalet, a heated atrium that overlooks downtown Milwaukee and seats up to 10 guests on Cafe Benelux's roof, officially opened yesterday, Thursday, March 11th. 90-minute reservations for this chalet can be made at lowlandswinter.com. We've loved seeing all of our museums reopen earlier this month. I've seen it all throughout the morning shows on TV. And now, thanks to an incredibly generous donation from Kohl's, Free Thank You Thursdays at the Milwaukee Public Museum will continue starting next Thursday, March 18th. Timed reservations are still required and you need to make a reservation, and they can be made up to 1 week in advance, so be sure to book your visit at mpm.edu. In a final push to fund a playground for young children in Milwaukee's historic 3rd Ward, an anonymous local donor created a $10,000 matching grant. Any donation after February 25th will be matched dollar for dollar until the $10,000 challenge grant is met. The playground, to be located at the corner of Jefferson and Erie Street in Gaslight Park, will include a United Way Born learning trail for fun interactive activities and a small multi-activity playground. This is the first playground to be built in the historic 3rd Ward neighborhood. If you want to help see this project come to fruition, you can make a donation on the historic 3rd Ward neighborhood's website. Amtrak announced some exciting news this week because of the increased demand and congressional funding. They will be restoring 12 long-distance routes to daily service. This new schedule will offer the most departures since June of 2020, when a pandemic-related schedule went into effect. One of the routes being restored is the Amtrak Empire Builder route that provides service from Chicago to Milwaukee, Twin Cities, and Portland. We're elated to be welcoming these passengers through Milwaukee once again. Next week, destination marketing organizations, attractions, tour organizers, hotels, and more will gather virtually for the first session of the Wisconsin Governor's Conference on Tourism. I am so proud that 2 of our Visit Milwaukee team will be speaking as part of the conference programming. At 11 a.m. on March 16th, Emily Tao, Communications and Metrics Manager, will join America's Black Holocaust Museum's Dr. Bert Davis, in addition to 2 other tourism professionals, for a discussion called Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion: Perspectives from Wisconsin DMOs Prioritizing DEAIA. And I have to tell you, Emily has helped to lead our organization as we move through this journey, and we are so excited for her to be part of this panel. At the same time, Claire Koenig, Visit Milwaukee's Senior Media Relations Manager, will join other destination PR pros for a lively discussion of post-COVID destination marketing, how to use PR for destination recovery. And as you all know, that Claire and the PR team have been doing that throughout the pandemic and really have set us up to come out of the pandemic in a really great place. Join us next Friday at 10:30 for our March Partner Spotlight, featuring 3 incredible partners. The neighborhood formerly known as Layton Boulevard West rebranded recently as Via CDC and is characterized by ethnic dining options spanning 4 continents, the Frank Lloyd Wright America's System Houses, the Urban Ecology Center, Hank Aaron Trail, and a whole lot more. So come learn about this vibrant neighborhood, as well as the upcoming bunny train and spring return of the East Troy Railroad Museum's historic train rides and 2021 events. We will also welcome new partner Tootle Transport, who has debuted wheelchair accessible transportation for people with mobile and cognitive challenges throughout the greater Milwaukee area. Check your email on Monday for that registration link. Now, I would like to introduce our Senior Marketing Manager, Catherine Lady. Catherine has been with Visit Milwaukee for a little over 5 years. In that time, she has helped to market the greater Milwaukee area as a destination of choice for conventions, events, and leisure travel. Prior to joining us, she was with Milwaukee Magazine for 8 years, finishing her time there as their art director. Catherine has amazing attention to detail and is instrumental in ensuring that we at Visit Milwaukee stay on brand. And in the past year, her role has grown immensely, and she's been instrumental in all of the marketing decisions for our organization. So Catherine, please join us to give us a recap on Giving Fest before we draw our $5,000 winner. I'm going to take myself off screen while you go through. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. Good morning. Appreciate you guys joining us for this Giving Fest recap. We're excited for our grand prize drawing, but first wanted to walk through some of the highlights of our campaign. So a quick overview, we celebrated 113 virtual events occurring January 15th through February 28th. There was a cash incentive for partners to create events, and the first 50 events posted to Milwaukee 365, our free community calendar, received a $1,000 cash prize. All participating events were then entered to win a grand prize of $5,000 from Visit Milwaukee, which will be drawn live shortly. All events were ticketed or included a tip jar to raise funds for the host business. In some cases, the event host donated their proceeds to a third party. The goal was to raise funds to help hospitality businesses through the economic downturn. To help elevate the 113 Giving Fest events, Visit Milwaukee utilized paid media, owned social channels, and earned media focused on the Milwaukee market. We are so grateful to our local partners who help get the word out. A special thanks to our media partner, 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, and to Bubbler Bikes, who generously donated media space in their app to promote the events. Our additional promotional partners were paid placements, who we worked with closely to ensure strategic and targeted media spend. Here's a look at some of the creative for Giving Fest, including a video that aired during the Packer playoff postgame on January 24th. All of it was produced and designed in-house so that we minimized our expenses, allowing us to dedicate budget dollars to advertising and giving back directly to our local hospitality businesses. The design is an evolution of our Season of Giving branding that ran during the holidays and features bold colors that are both eye-catching and playful. The Giving Fest media buy utilized a mix of print, digital, billboards, radio, and television to saturate the Milwaukee market. Visit Milwaukee stretched its advertising dollars to deliver 6.7 million impressions. By leveraging local partners, we were able to acquire added value in many of our partnerships. Outlets also over-delivered on booked media, expanding our reach further. Media placement included video promotions of Elizabeth K of 99.1 The Mix, e-newsletters with Shepherd Express, Biz Times, and Urban Milwaukee, Milwaukee Business Journal print ads, sponsored content on Milwaukee.com, homepage takeovers on fox6.com, and on-air reads with 95.7 Big FM and 88.9 Radio Milwaukee. A 45-minute interview featuring Peggy Williams-Smith aired on 11:30 a.m. and more. We paired paid media with paid social media campaign. It garnered over 737 impressions and triggered 8,689 clicks. During the campaign, the most popular post featured Valentine's Day virtual events. Thank you to our partners and community for extending our reach by sharing on social. We love seeing the variety of events, including Gothic Milwaukee's Bloody Valentine, Celesta's virtual cooking class, Carcade's gaming and interview show, and Best Place's virtual tour of 16 historic Pabst buildings. Sharing events on social media help to amplify our Giving Fest message. All of the ads and social media posts pointed to our main Giving Fest page on our website, where information about the festival, social graphics for promotion, an FAQ page, and more could be found. Of course, it also included a link to the events themselves, which were pulled from Milwaukee365.com, and we drove over 60,000 combined page views. Giving Fest was also promoted through earned media. Our strategy was to use relationships with local media as well as local influencers to spread the word about the events. You hopefully have already seen some of the headlines about Giving Fest. As many of you know, we have great relationships with local news stations, which means we promoted Giving Fest events on a weekly basis on TMJ4 and a monthly basis on WMLW, CBS 58, and Fox 6. In addition to local news stations, we also had media hits on Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Milwaukee Business Journal, and on Milwaukee.com. In total, we had 23 media hits for Giving Fest, for a total of 13.2 earned media impressions. To close out Giving Fest, Visit Milwaukee partnered with Light the Hone, again 88.9, Summerfest, and S&P Parking to host over 400 cars on February 27th for a 30-minute light show. We were thrilled by the huge turnout by the public to celebrate the end of Giving Fest. Our festival finale post on Twitter was one of our most liked tweets. A few members of our staff were on hand to help direct traffic and had a great time seeing groups of families, grandparents, and couples having curbside dinner dates while enjoying the event. We captured some data from the 50 events that qualified for the $1,000 giveaway and found that events averaged 73 minutes, had a total of 3,754 attendees, and brought in over $82,000 in revenue for those businesses. Based on that reporting, we estimate that the 113 Giving Fest events generated $185,770 of revenue, and that is on top of the $55,000 Visit Milwaukee contributed. This resulted in a total economic impact of $240,000 during the 6-week Giving Fest promotion. All of the generated revenue went directly back to the businesses. Thank you to everyone who participated in making this campaign a success. We were very impressed with the quantity and caliber of events. We are happy to kick off 2021 with strong event programming, and we look forward to continuing our partnerships with all of you as we move forward in recovery. And now I'd like to turn it back to Peggy for the moment everyone's been waiting for, the live drawing for the $5,000 grand prize.
Thank you, Catherine. You know, our marketing team did such an awesome job of making sure that we promoted each and every one of you during Giving Fest and that we could help you out during a time that we were going to see traditionally slower business in all of our hospitality partners. So thank you. And now I'm really excited. Our Chief Marketing Officer is behind me with her mask on, shaking up. Every single person who had an event during this time frame is in this jar, and I am going to take it from her. She's going to give me the winner. Go ahead. All right, my stomach is. Celesta Restaurant is the winner of the $5,000. I don't know if anyone from Celesta Restaurant is on the call right now, but it was Celesta Restaurant, as you can all see here. Ooh, that light is really bright. Maybe if I turn it off, you can see Celesta Restaurant is the winner. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. And we thank you so much for tuning in today to see that winner. Now, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, our very own volunteer coordinator extraordinaire, and that's the least of what he does in our community, is Tony Snell. Tony is an accomplished human rights advocate and serves as the chair of the City of Milwaukee Equal Rights Commission. He also served as senior director for the Milwaukee 2020 Host Committee, the host organization of the 2020 Democratic National Convention. Milwaukee Magazine said Tony is passionate about human rights, and his Twitter account is one of 10 recommended by who you want to follow, @TonyEquality. So now, without further ado, let's get into our program and welcome Tony Snell.
Thank you, Peggy, and good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here, and I am just very fortunate to be a part of a wonderful team here at Visit Milwaukee and a wonderful team at the Office of Equity and Inclusion in the City of Milwaukee, where the Equal Rights Commission is housed. And thanks to all of you partners. We really appreciate you, and you're a part of this wonderful team that's trying to make Milwaukee a better place for everyone. The Equal Rights Commission is here to promote and protect equality, equity, and human rights through education, enforcement, and community engagement, and specifically in employment, housing, and public accommodations. Simply put, it's about opening our hearts and minds and doors to everyone. ensuring that everyone can access more of life, quality of life, by designing the world and Milwaukee to include everyone. And yes, I had a wonderful time at the DNC and the host committee. And I will tell you, a convention with that magnitude, they put a special accessibility lens on every decision and spending line item. And you know, when we go big again, Milwaukee, and you know we will, we want to be ready. I'm a part of that most important team over at the city as well in my civic volunteer duty. And one person that I have the fortune and the privilege of working with is someone who I met right off at the beginning of my service with the Equal Rights Commission 4 years ago. That's Rebecca Rabatten. And now she's with the Office of Equity and Inclusion and is the ADA coordinator in the city, ensuring that all city departments, programs, services, activities are accessible for persons with disabilities. And prior to that, she was a commercial building inspector, a facility projects coordinator with buildings and bridges, and has done so much more. And a Purdue graduate in construction engineering. And Rebecca, I welcome you. And I also want to say Happy International Women's Day. Well, previous and International Women's History Month. So welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Tony, for that very kind introduction. My name, as Tony said, is Rebecca Rabatten. I am a white female with blondish grayish hair, chin length, and I have glasses on as well. And today I speak about how the ADA is good for business and some considerations as business owners might not have been considering and how they can possibly accommodate their customers that have disabilities.
Well, Rebecca, that's interesting that you described yourself, because that is also important for people with different levels of visibility watching us today. So I'm a middle-aged guy with short, dark brown hair and, of course, graying hair and glasses and wearing a blue shirt and a blazer. And tell us why that's important. And I'm also interested in that background that you've got there.
So we both provided audio descriptions for anyone that might be, that has low vision or is blind. That is very common when you do any kind of presentations working with the disabled community, that you provide audio descriptions. Now, I'm going to kind of move here. My background, I was driving on 18th Street in Pilsen area of Chicago, and I saw this going on the street, and I had to circle back and get out and talk to the folks there and ask if it was okay for me to take a picture. The gentleman, who is a business owner, he's a barber, his shop is not accessible. The entrance is not accessible. So he was accommodating this customer that is a wheelchair user by cutting his hair out on the sidewalk. So that's one simple accommodation that was provided, and I had to, of course, take a picture of it.
Well, that's a perfect visual about what we're talking about. And he was able to accommodate that customer. But at the same time, we have to look at it where that customer should have been able to have that accessibility. And that's what you do. So I'm going to let you take it away and teach us a few things. And we're here to listen and learn about this important part of our everyday life.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to kind of go over the spending power of the disabled community. Many people may not be aware of that, business owners. When you look at disposable income of the disabled community, they have $490 billion of disposable income, which is very comparable to other demographics, such as the African American community and the Hispanic community. But total discretionary income, the disabled community is more than the combined African American and Hispanic community. So that's quite a bit of discretionary income that they have. Next slide, please. So how does that relate here in Milwaukee? Well, the Wisconsin disability community, they have over 7.8 billion dollars of disposable income for working age adults with disabilities here in Wisconsin. Next slide, please. So how many individuals within the United States considers themselves as a person that has a disability? On a national average, about 1 in 4. And that is very comparable to here in Wisconsin as well. About 1 in 4 persons consider themselves or identifies themselves as a person that has a disability. So what is a person with a disability? Well, as defined in the ADA, a person with a disability is an individual that has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits them in one or more major life activities. An individual that has a record of such an impairment, or a person who is regarded as such an impairment. So what would be record or regarded? So individuals that may have temporary disabilities that might be considered regarded. So you would still need to provide accommodations. A person that has surgery and maybe is using a boot or has to use a wheelchair for a while, they would still need to be accommodated under the ADA. And having a record as such an impairment would be someone that has an episodic disability, someone that maybe is diabetic and they have to check their blood sugar level, that you would accommodate that person, be able to go ahead and do that. And that you usually see in the work environment as an employee. Next slide, please. So you want to start considering, how can I tap into that purchasing power of working age adults that have disabilities? And how do we need to comply with the ADA as a place of public accommodation? Next slide, please. So under Title III, and Title III is public accommodations in the ADA, they list a lot of different types of public accommodations. And basically lodging, drinking in food establishments, places of public gatherings such as museums, sales or rental, places of public display or collection, places of recreation, education, and exercise. So for example, Miller Park as places of public gathering, Five-Star Forum, all of those would have to be accessible as well. But also places that provide examination and testing and courses for licensing, credentialing, and certifications. Next slide, please. So as a public accommodation, you cannot discriminate against a class of disabilities or based on the severity of the disabilities. I'm going to kind of go through these next couple slides quick because this is law and I really want to get to the nit and grit about accommodations. And you'll have access to these slides that you can read through these yourself. But you want to be able to allow people with disabilities to participate, not provide, have any surcharge, and not separate them individually. You can provide a separate program for a person with disability, but if they wish to participate in a program that is not specific for persons with disability, you have to allow them to participate. Next slide,
So
please.
it's important it's important to be inclusive in everything we do, in every program, and all of those aspects, right?
Correct. And you want to be as integrated as possible. And next slide, this kind of is the same thing. So you do want to, as Tony said, all policies, practice, and procedures, you want to ensure that you're allowing someone with a disability access to your goods and services. So what type of reasonable accommodations you provide is really dependent on the individual's disability, and they may have specific request of accommodation. And I'll get into that as we go through those different types of disabilities and what type they have and to the extent of the disability they have. Okay, so some of the different types of disability, mobility, and that's usually the first thing that comes to mind when someone thinks of a person with disability. The international symbol of accessibility is a wheelchair user. That's the first thing you think of. So that includes individuals not only as a wheelchair user, but also I'm going to take that back, roll that back a little bit. So wheelchair user, individuals that motorize scooters, but also individuals that may have some other mobility disabilities, such as arthritis, maybe individuals that have some, like, for example, Parkinson's, where they might not be very stable on their feet. Sensory, you have both deaf and hard of hearing and blind and low vision. There's cognitive and learning disabilities, environmental, mental health, emotional and mental health, as well as environmental. Those are just some of the different types of disabilities. Next slide. So mobility, I had mentioned, is probably one of the most common that we think of when we think of disabilities. And similar things that we need to be concerned about for individuals that have multiple disabilities is accessible entrances. So this gentleman couldn't get in there because the entrance wasn't accessible. Wide door openings and automatic door openers, ramps, curb cuts, accessible pathways, accessible parking along with this access that goes with that accessible parking space, grab bars and toilet rooms, accessible tables and seating, and accessible guest rooms. Now, a lot of this, as far as in the built environment for mobility disabilities, that's usually addressed in the building code. And if you have an existing building, some of it you might not be able to accomplish because it would be technically infeasible, such as this situation here with this gentleman cutting the hair here for the wheelchair user. It was an existing building. It's technically feasible because of structural considerations that it would not allow them to open up that doorway. So some things that you can consider, though, if you're an existing building, is just maintenance of those accessible features, such as keeping your accessible entrance and pathways clear. I can't tell you how many times I've seen where people put in garbage cans right by the doorway going into a bathroom. Well, for a wheelchair user or motorized scooter user, that doesn't give them the clearance they need to be able to maneuver and get into that toilet room. Periodically check the functionality of your automatic door openers. Do they work? Before voting days, I go out and check all of the city-owned facilities that are used as polling locations to make sure those automatic door openers are functioning properly. I want to give enough time for our building and bridges section in DPW to go out there and have those fixed if they're not functioning properly. Snow removal from sidewalks, ramps, curb cuts, accessible parking spaces, and aisles. I can't tell you how big of a deal this is. I get complaints about this every winter. A lot of times when businesses have contractors come in to clear their parking lots, they will just put all of the snow right in the accessible aisles that are next to the accessible parking spaces, or just put it even in the accessible parking space and accessible aisle next to that parking space. Well, then how does a driver that has a disability park their vehicle and have an accessible route to get up onto the sidewalk? That access aisle next to that parking space provides access up onto that sidewalk for them to get into your business. You cover that with snow, they have no way of being able to go in to your business. They'll just leave. Not putting the garbage trucks within turning radius within toilet rooms, I mentioned. And this is something that's come up quite a bit in the city with us using more of the active streets and outdoor cafes and parklets, is putting in a seating in those locations, but wanting to put in all cafe style seating. Well, that does not provide access for a person that's a wheelchair user or a person that has arthritis. That's difficult for them to be able to enjoy that facility. And the ADA requires that you have so much percentage of your seating to be accessible. And then, of course, accessible guest rooms and accessible assembly areas are to be able to provide those facilities that are, those rooms that are accessible, and those open spaces with the companion seating for to accompany wheelchair users where they park, like such as in Miller Park, in the Pfizer Forum, Marcus Theaters. They're to sell those only to individuals that have disabilities, or at the very last few minutes before the program starts, to sell those companion seats. So keep that in mind. That's very important. And why it's up to the almost starting time is because individuals that have disabilities, they may need more time to be able to come into the building and get situated, and they might just get themselves situated right before the program starts. Next slide, please. So sensory, deaf and hard of hearing. So there are a lot of different accommodations you can provide for persons with that are deaf and hard of hearing. Most common that you see is American Sign Language interpreters, video remote interpreting, which is an American Sign Language interpreter that comes through remotely. Certified deaf interpreters, those are individuals that were born deaf or lost their hearing at a very young age. And then what they do is you would have an American Sign Language interpreter at an event signing what the speaker is saying, and then that certified deaf interpreter is breaking it down as to the vernacular that the deaf community uses. And so, for example, the press briefings, the joint press briefings with the Milwaukee County and the city of Milwaukee on COVID, the in-screen interpreter that you see on the screen there is a certified deaf interpreter. That was what was requested by the deaf community. There's also telephone relay service, which if you dial 711, you would be able to access the Wisconsin relay service. Though some of those fees we pay for on our phone bills provides funding for that. You call that number and you can then give them number of the individual that you want to talk to that is deaf, and they will call that number, and that relay service will work in between the two parties speaking. Another accommodation is closed captioning. I think everyone knows what that is. Computer-aided real-time transcribing, same thing as really closed captioning, but it's with an individual actually being on site, where if you're having a convention and you have a screen up and you have you want to be able to see what the speaker is saying at that time, just like you would for closed captioning, but it's more venue driven rather than broadcast driven. So why would someone want closed captioning or computer-aided real-time transcribing as opposed to American Sign Language interpreting or a certified deaf interpreter? Is basically where people lose their hearing. People that are older lose their hearing older, or maybe they never learned sign language, will never request an American Sign Language interpreter or certified deaf interpreter, but they will ask for captioning or computer-aided real-time transcripts. Some other accommodations are assisted listening devices. These are like little loop holders that when you're in an assembly, a setting, that you, individuals that are hard of hearing or maybe use a hearing aid, it helps amplify the sound within that assembly area. And a lot of times you will see going into an assembly area, even in like if you ever go into Independence First in their breakout rooms, they do have signage showing that they have assisted listening devices. Those signs are being installed in Common Council, a chamber room, as well as some of the committee rooms within City Hall. They have not been installed yet, but they are going to be done. So you will see that. Other continue on, communication pads. And this would be just basically like almost like a computer where you can type. And then there's also a communication card, which actually the Wisconsin Department of Health and Human Services has, and that you can access. And it's basically a printout with the alphabet and numbers and how do you feel and time that you can point to. Now, I did provide that to the Milwaukee Fire Department, so they printed those out and laminated them, and each engine has those communication cards, and so they do use those. So concern about maintenance with those particular features would be, you always want to make sure that you're including an accommodation statement when you're announcing any kind of program. You want to let individuals know that here's who you need to contact if you're requesting accommodation. You want to train your staff on various accommodations available. And you want to make sure you place signage for assisted listening device availability at key locations. And periodically, you do want to check the functionality of those assisted listening devices. Next slide. For individuals that are blind and have low vision, first thing is service animals within facilities. I get probably a call a couple of times a month about violations with service animals, or where do I stand as a business owner with service animals? What are my responsibilities, obligations of letting someone come in with an animal? I get a lot of calls on that. And that's a whole other webinar unto itself. Also, you want to, for the blind community, provide documents in large print if they request it. And also menus and documents provided in Braille upon request. And I have to say, requests for Braille has gone down substantially. I know the city, they only get one request for a ballot in Braille now. In the past, they had quite a bit more requests for that. But now with some of the new voting machines that we have with the AccuMark voting machine, it allows someone to listen to it and then also enlarge the screen to be able to cast their ballot. Your websites need to be accessible. They need to be in compliance with the web content accessibility guidelines. You also want to maintain and have wayfinding and orientation programs. Features, how does an individual maneuver around within your facility? You want to keep those up and not have opportunities where someone can easily take that into consideration. I think one thing that you see a lot within your facilities is Braille signage at all toilet rooms and rooms that are numbered and generally open to the public. And then, as Tony and I just started off our presentation, we provided an audio description of who we were, what we look like. So maintenance of accessible features are what do you need to do to continue that is you want to train your staff on the ADA and Wisconsin laws regarding service animals. And like I said, that is a whole other webinar unto itself. There's a lot involved there. You want to periodically check your website to ensure that it's compliant with WCAG or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And only include readable PDFs on your website pages. A PDF is a snapshot or a picture of a document, and an individual that's blind that's using a reading application of a web page, that reading application would not be able to read that PDF. If you save it as a readable PDF, then that I'll use just one application called JAWS, will be able then to read that readable PDF for that individual. You want to maintain wayfinding and orientation features, and you want to relocate any braille signage on toilet room doors to the left side of toilet room doors. So that's something that I see a lot, and that's something that we had to correct a lot within city facilities, that there was signage for the toilet rooms on the toilet room doors itself. And just think, a person that's blind filling on the door which toilet room it is, and someone opens the door and they would be falling. So there's actually a requirement that it's to go on the latch side of the door, up 40 inches minimum, up to 60 inches maximum where the braille hits that, and 9 inches from the jamb of the door. Next slide, please. Accommodating individuals with cognitive and learning disabilities, you want to make appropriate language is being used. You don't want to make any assumptions what the individual can or cannot do. And you want to explain anything that you're going through them with clearly, and you have to be willing to repeat yourself. And this is probably one of the hardest things for me as an ADA coordinator to work on, is learning how to simplify language. We're in a world of using a lot of acronyms, or we use our vernacular within our own field, and simplifying that language sometimes takes a lot of effort. So you want to be able to simplify and summarize. Next slide, please. Emotional and mental health. Understand that stress can affect a person's ability to function. I think during COVID, we're talking about stress levels for everyone, and being overwhelmed and not being able to think straight, and clearly at times. So the amount of stress, how it affects an individual. So please keep that in mind, that it does affect a person that has emotional mental health disability. So just having the respect for them, and not speak to them in a demeaning manner. Pressure will really exasperate the situation for those individuals.
Well, Rebecca, the COVID itself, for all of us in like these virtual meetings, has certainly given us a challenge with navigation, and even to unmute or mute. A while ago I was talking, and again I forgot to unmute, but we have to think that on a different level, that to be accommodating at all times. We get frustrated just in Zoom sometimes because something's not working or there's a technological difference. But let's just remember, this is something we should be focused on every time we communicate with someone, because we don't know who we're communicating with or what they bring with them. So this is really important. Thank you.
And a good point about with COVID and us working in a very virtual world right now. I mean, the common phrase I heard on NPR program, they were talking about the common phrases. Now, you need to unmute yourself. And I actually had an American Sign Language interpreter set up for a virtual wellness program for one of the city's deaf employees. And so just checking on the progress of that. And they said, well, there were a lot of problems because it was freezing up. And so the interpreter wasn't being able to hear anything that the instructor was saying. And I'm like, oh, so everyone had this shared experience that the person that's deaf experiencing. So it helps us to understand what it's like not to hear, not to be able to pick up everything. I think it's making us actually more sensitive to persons with disability in this COVID pandemic. As far as another issue, when an individual that has an emotional or mental health disability, you may have to listen to them and let them vent. And I know this is very, very hard to do. Some people are better at being able to stay calm, but a lot of people, I know myself, I can be reactionary. I did get to experience one individual that worked in the mayor's office that she was wonderful to just listen to someone that came in and talked about every ill in the city, and she listened to him for an hour. And she knew that he had a disability, he had a mental health disability, but she did not demean him. She listened to him, she did not rush him, and she valued what he had to say. And I had to give kudos to her for being able to do that. Next slide, please. Environmental disabilities is becoming something that is being, you're seeing more and more of this coming up. I don't think that there's a lot of people that have this, but you're hearing about it more, where in the past you did not. So environmental disabilities, some of the things that you can do is maybe establish a no idling policies and scent-free policies, no smoking policies. I know that we've had to accommodate a few employees within the city of Milwaukee, where we've built out a particular space, working space for them with filtering. And we also had to put in a policy that no more perfumes or sprays in our toilet rooms in the city, actually in the Zeidler building, because it really affected a couple of individuals working in that building. I already kind of mentioned that, choosing eco-friendly or low-scent cleaning products, eliminate any chemical spraying, and actually letting the individual know ahead of time that that will be happening. I can think of one instance where we were resurfacing one of our parking levels within the Zeidler Municipal Building, and looking at the VOC levels of the surfacing that they were going to put down, and that we had to end up applying that on a weekend because we were very concerned about the off-gassing of that product.
Well, Becky, I want to point out the time is we're right at the end there, but I wanted to be mindful of how people could follow up, could receive additional training, contact your office for advice and guidance, and also the Equal Rights Commission, which is part of Office of Equity and Inclusion. So I perhaps maybe it's best that we give that information as we come to an end in time.
Okay, I do want to pass, can we go up a few slides? Oh, and so we were at the end. I just want to, that, not complying with the ADA costs you money. You want to avoid costly lawsuits, redesign to your facilities, and loss of good public record. And I have a couple of things about some lawsuits filed within here specific to this, either the state of Wisconsin or within the city of Milwaukee. So my next page, please, slide, please. And next, so there's my contact information. So I don't have right now, any additional training set up, but I would be more than happy to do so. We did do a 4-series training last May, and I would be more than happy to do that again. I would like individuals that would like to learn more about training. If we go to the next slide. So here are some of the things that we covered last May. Title I employment, meeting your customers with disabilities, accommodations, and service animals. So I am more than happy to do any training, or even come out and do lunch and learns, or if you want specific training for your businesses and your employees, I'm more than happy to do that. And so you do have my contact information there. And the last thing I want to point out is usually, well, is there anything as far as monies available or any kind of tax credits or anything like that? And I wanted to see it. I'm going to pull that up in a minute. I'm going to put this link in
The chat.
the chat right now.
Awesome. Because it's a win-win for everyone. Success for those that face those challenges and disabilities. It's a win for our businesses because we can, there is a room for more business, and it's the right thing to do as a business. And we become more accommodating and have a potential to attract those larger events and conventions that really focus on making sure that we accommodate and making sure that we provide that equal access to everyone. So that's so important. So I wanted to thank you, Becky, and appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I know you have so many resources available. People just need to reach out and contact Becky. Even if you get on the phone with her for a few minutes, she'll teach you a lot over the phone. She's done that with me. So I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your knowledge with us today, Becky.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone for joining us. And we hope you'll see you again next Friday for another Friday webinar with Visit Milwaukee as we explore more to make this a better and more attractive place for everyone. So take care. Have a great weekend, everyone.